Hello, Lauren. Nice to meet you. You're going to be the sponsor in both the London and the Stockholm events, and you're going to be part of panels in both of the events. So glad to have you on board.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. It's been such a pleasure, and thank you for having me. Excited to be part of your amazing events.
Yeah, well, we are very excited to have you there as well, and really look forward to your contribution there. What we thought prior to the events, maybe to see your thoughts on a few points that we would like to take up with you. And well, I have about 3 questions for you. First question would be about COVID-19. It had an incredible impact on the hospitality industry, and that means actually that the role of the commercial team changed dramatically. Well, over the past months, you can say actually over the past year. So what qualities do you think future leaders should have to lead their team to increased results? Is there a pre and post-COVID behavior you see?
Anne-Marie, I think that's a really good question, because I think nobody saw COVID coming. I think that the dynamics and the ability for commercial teams to navigate through the not normal situations can be really, really challenging for different individuals within organizations. I think some of the things that you firstly have to recognize within the commercial teams is there's firstly an acknowledgement around some of the things that they've now been forced to have to recognize, which were challenging within their businesses. Particularly the fact that a lot of businesses have been operating through manual processes. They've been a strong bedroom focus within the market of hotels versus utilization of their space or looking at alternative revenue opportunities through F&B. We've also seen that a lot of commercial managers have had really poor data. So therefore, decision-making had been slow, issues around how you optimize and get the most return out of those assets has been challenging. I think that there's been slow response times where people have generally, as commercial teams, have had to not only navigate through lower demand, but issues around a lack of strategy to navigate through a COVID-impacted environment. So what we've seen is that organizational structures have actually changed. We saw through COVID that a lot of operational and commercial teams were reduced. And therefore less people were there that were required to do a lot more, and therefore they actually had to reshift the way that they led those operations, particularly through a mindset of knowing that they actually have to lead from the front, and in order to be able to help bring the team that is there, along the journey to ensure that there is, stability and consistency, and to be able to get through a crisis. We've certainly seen that, commercial teams' abilities, instead of having a fixed view of things, they've had to be more flexible. They've also had to take on a different approach. It has to be more collaborative versus individualized. And they've definitely had to look at accelerating change in order to meet the needs of the market. The current issues that we're experiencing with lack of bookings, lack of revenue, and also having to ensure that they meet the needs of the existing teams that were left to help drive demand. So lots of changes within commercial teams. And I think we will continue to see that moving forward as we navigate through some of these, it's still challenging and uncertain times.
Yeah, I think you're quite right, and I think there's two things that actually are happening. The fact that our customers are getting less revenue, but also I think the fact that the commercial team just feels very insecure. What is my future going to be? We see a lot of hotels, but also venues saying, okay, some people have just left the company, found other works. It's quite difficult to get them back, but also just like the ones that have remained, just like there's still this uncertainty about, am I going to have a job? And that's also something a leader should try to manage, to keep them just like up on their toes.
You've seen it definitely in the hospitality industry, the hardest industry hit worldwide with COVID. And I think you've seen it across the market between restaurants and hotels and venues, and the impact not necessarily just on their working world, but also on the personal world and the mental well-being of the individual. I mean, we've certainly seen it across the teams, across the globes. And as a leader, you have to navigate through that crisis, and you have to give a sense of security and stability to your team to help them still deliver results. As much as they may be slower, as much as they may be different, and their approaches are different, you still have to give them confidence that things will be okay, and you're there to stand with them through that tough journey.
Yeah, quite right. I totally agree with you. Like another thing that's also happening is the need for technology. What do you think actually technology what impact does it have in the future, and do you see a difference in technology needs pre and post COVID?
Yeah, I think that's also a really good question, Anne-Marie. And I think something when I've looked over the last 12 months, what's happened as a tech company for us, we've seen a lot of the smaller players that were really heavily impacted, that didn't have the balance sheets to support their reopening, that are still in lockdown. That really had an impact around their operational efficiencies or even the ability to operate. But where we've seen some of the larger players and mid-market properties, groups and independents, where they have still got the ability, regionalizing some of their operations a little bit outside of the most densely COVID impacted areas, is that there's been a real need to prioritize technology because of the fact that they've had reduced infrastructures, they've had reduced revenue, they've got to do more with less. So what actually happens is, in order to be able to get back that human capital that's been lost, technology is now stepping up to be a priority versus what it used to be, which was slower to change across this industry. We've certainly seen, greater digitization, and automation. People need visibility and they want to be able to have more control around their connectivity. There's certainly been a real push to see a reduced cost of sale and a cost of acquisition around that customer. Therefore, the best way to do that is to automate and have technology solutions that are seamless to create a easy, simple customer journey experience. And in order to address some of these things, people have looked at, bridging the gap around talent shortages, also meeting the needs around teams being restructured where they're now becoming more centralized. Therefore, technology solutions have to help enable the changes within those organizational structures to allow them to still drive revenue and be more effective and efficient. And we've seen a massive shift that says, what used to be part of a slower sales cycle, more are now a priority and a real resurgence of COVID actually pushing the industry forward, because that realization I need to automate has now been almost the tailwind, forcing industry shifts and changes.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. And something also you touched on previously, the information that we are getting. I mean, we as a revenue manager, we struggle daily, especially on our total profit projects, in which we actually want to help hotels, especially to generate, to make the most out of the whole of their property. For us, getting the right information, it is still a hassle. And I hope that there's also part of the automation or the technology that will help us there, because that will really have an impact, I think, on hotels being able to optimize their revenue much better in the future.
You are 100% on the money, because what we've also seen is the fact that because there are so many, like even you take management companies that have got different investments and different, property owners and across different groups that have got different mandated systems or no proprietary systems or manual processes. What we've seen is that the ability to centralize and to have connectivity and then to aggregate that data through a central layer of visibility and tracking and reporting into business intelligence tools is going to become the norm. Okay, because when you're working cross markets, cross properties, cross brands, that ability to have good revenue analytics and reporting capability is actually critical to the function of driving bottom line performance for a group or a property or even a management company.
There's a question then to you, because I mean, one of the things that we see is like the total value per customer. It's quite difficult to get. I mean, customer walks into a hotel or a venue, we know what is ordered, we can just like track to this person. But you know, they stay at the hotel, they have a drink in the evening, or they eat and drink and then pay with another credit card, and then whoops, there goes then the information that we want to have. Is there some way you think in the near future that that's going to be tackled, or is it just like, okay, well, it's GDPR, we're never going to have access to that kind of information? Sorry, what do you think?
Look, I think that obviously with every different region, you've got different restrictions around GDPR, and there's all the compliance and levels of privacy that every tech company has to adhere to. However, I do believe that there may become more tools available through mobile apps where, you know, you look at the contactless environments of technology with using payment methods through mobile. You know, the more data that you can actually enable within a particular regional with, full navigations around, the tools that geographical positioning, spend management within properties that can really look at that visibility is going to become, another step forward. We are going to become really, we're in that digital era. We're in the whole of hospitality moving forward to be completely digitized. And that is going to be something that we're going to continue to see as we move forward over the next 12, 24 months. It's almost this race to knowing who's there, where they are, how much they're spending, what's the return, what's the cost of that customer, how much are they spending, and where and who, with very targeted customer information that's very relevant to them. And that's going to become where AI steps in, where, all of the predictive analytics around people's behavior is going to come in. And this is just some of the trends that we will see moving forward.
Yeah, we welcome it. Year 2021, give us that piece of information, right? I mean, we're talking about people traveling to the moon, but then we can't really see that kind of information from our end. I have actually, it's just like when we talk about a future, there's a lot of discussion of what will happen in the meetings industry. Online has partly replaced some forms of meetings, the smaller meetings anyway. Do you see a pattern for meetings in the future? And what do you think properties need to do to adapt to this future?
I think that it's a very good question, because there's a couple of really key things. As much as we want to go back to what it was pre-COVID, COVID's going to be with us for the future. And navigating through the way the meetings industry needs to adapt is that things are still going to be in a very hybrid scenario. You're going to have that mix of potentially smaller groups in multiple locations that are connected through technology that can participate still in groups. But there is that virtual and face-to-face mix, because there's going to be continuous limitations around size of groups that are allowed at different venues in different countries across the globe. So that's going to be one thing that we're going to continue to see. And I think but what we've also seen is that there's an enormous pent-up demand within the industry, because people have been restricted so much, and it's natural for us as humans to want to come together. And there are going to be a lot of benefits where peers, come together to reignite that human interaction, to look at doing business together. And there's a real need. We've seen that. And what we're actually seeing, it's almost like a boomerang. It's like it's being pent up, and it's like that it will come back with a vengeance. So when you look at what do venues need to do to enable themselves and future-proof themselves for events and meetings, is to really get themselves ready digitally with the tools that enable them to have and offer to customers both face-to-face and virtual environments. Give them that contactless experience, give them that virtual connectivity, give them the tools that allow them to do, virtual walkthroughs. There's going to be continuous levels of engagement in many different forms in a digital market, but still bringing together that human interaction. We've also seen, like, some of the smart hoteliers position themselves, at the vanguard of the trend, really with some of the, latest and customer friendly meeting experiences. We've also seen, seamless booking processes, because people want to do things quickly. They don't want to waste time on the things that are just there's too much grunt work. Okay, give them that good experience, engage them, drive them, they retain them, and give them that ability to be flexible and cost efficient. And then you'll start to see that shift that starts to drive that ROI that venues are looking for, to understand how much that customer is actually worth to them. So there's layers of that experience, that's layers of making sure that journey is good, and additionally making sure that you can bring them back and retain that engagement level, where you're going to start to see loyalty programs brought in differently, how people are across different properties or groups or experiences and benefits, and free of charge, different assets being provided as part of packaged up bundled values. There's lots and lots of things that venues can do to really monetize their assets really well, and still enable that human to human connection of engagement that brings that value and memorable experience, because it's not going away. It's changing, and we just need to adapt to it, and we've got to help step forward for the whole industry to ensure that, we're all in it together and we all come through it together.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that I really hope that we're going to get out of this challenging period. Actually, the fact that we do this together and we drive it forward. If one thing, I hope that COVID actually pushed us forward a little bit faster than we should. And being the organizer of partly a physical and hybrid event, online event,
yeah,
I really hope that that technology will actually be pushed that way. It's exciting, but it's challenging also, because it's new to everybody, right?
It is, and what you're going to also see is that there's been a lot of been this frame of mind with technology players as well, where they felt that they almost hold different properties hostage with the lack of connectivity, because they feel they own that customer. What we're starting to see is that technology providers have to start to have open APIs. There's going to be a shift around that decision-making process, so that it's going to enable multiple tech companies to connect together to drive the overall efficient and experience for those organizations. And it's important that when venues actually make a decision around a technology provider, that is part of their agreement, that they are not restricted without that ability to connect, because they want to report on data in different ways. It doesn't mean every single piece of technology is going to give that independently. They need to, without that real high cost operationally, being forced to maintain a piece of technology that doesn't give them everything they need. So open APIs, connecting, working together, partnering together to really help enable this industry to move forward is going to be part of what our future is for tech companies as well.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. And I think it's also something that the hotel industry need to help the technology providers with, making the right demands, asking for developments that would drive them also forward. And that way, the way what you said is also, we're in this together, and I hope also really that that's going to be the way forward.
Absolutely, Anne-Marie.
Thank you so much. It was really a delight talking to you. I feel that I could have asked you 20 million more questions, maybe in a future. But I think it's about the end of this interview. Really looking forward to seeing Ivvy on stage in both London and in Stockholm. And hope to be meeting you in the future again. Thank you so much, Ellen.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you for having me. Lovely to be part of this, and appreciate the time, and likewise wonderful to meet you, and look forward to those events in the next coming couple of weeks.